Okay, so after you've downloaded your eyelash brush or brushes, get some different options. After you've downloaded them and installed them, now it's time to put these eyelashes on your model. Sometimes you have models that are lacking eyelashes, or their eyelashes are very faint, or you just want to enhance the eyelashes. So there's lots of different options out there where we can find some free Photoshop brushes that we can add these eyelashes. What we want to do is first create a new layer where we're going to apply these brushes. So at the top here, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'll go to my brush tool, and in my brush options, I'm going to click the downward pointing arrow and go to my brush options gear icon in the upper right here. Click on that. Now I can see all of my brushes. If you just installed a brush and it's not showing up, what you need to do is you need to quit Photoshop and relaunch it, and it will show up in your options for your brushes at the bottom here. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to use this brush here, SS Eyelashes, and this dialog box will pop up. What this means is if I append, it's going to add the eyelashes to the bottom of all these other brush options. Or I could just replace all of these brushes that are in here, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and replace them, because for right now, that's all I want to see are these brushes. If I need to get back to all my original brushes, I can click on this gear, and I can say reset brushes, and it'll bring up my original default brushes. So what I want to do is I want to find a brush that looks good, that I think is going to work well for this model. So she's got some large eyebrows, and her eyelashes are a little sparse here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find something that can kind of stand out. So I'll go with this eyelash right here. It looks pretty small though. If I hold it up there, the number you can see is the size, the default size of this brush. It's 488, so it's pretty small. I don't want to use that. I'm going to go with something with a higher number. So if I pick this one here, that's a 1502. It's much larger. So it's going to be better to decrease the size of the brush than to try to increase it, because it will pixelate. So I can decrease the size of that brush or the lash by hitting my bracket keys on my keyboard. So I want to zoom in here, and I'm going to try to figure out what size this needs to be. And you can see that it's not perfectly lining up. And that's fine. I'm going to first brush on this blank layer, and then I'll rotate it and adjust it later. So it looks like this is pretty close. If I go down one more, I feel like that might be too small. Actually, I think that's actually good. Yeah. Okay, I can make that work. So here's the size that I want, and the color on my foreground color is the color that it's going to brush. So you can see if I select white and brush it on there, it's going to give me white. Oh, but it's at 32%. So I want to make sure for right now that my opacity is set to 100%. And I'm going to Command Z to undo that brush. And I want to make sure that my opacity is set to 100%, like I said. Now if I brush that on there, white. Not quite what I'm looking for here. The color, the way that I can choose what color I want to use is I could pick up, click on my foreground color here, and click on the eyebrow. And it's going to give me the hair color from her eyebrow. And I'll show you how to adjust this here in a minute. But first, so we've got our color set, we've got our brush picked. Now what I want to do is line this up fairly close and click and brush that on there. Okay, that looks pretty brown. Probably not going to want that, because it's going to be it's going to need to be black like the original eyelashes here. So I'm going to show you how to fix this. What we can do is we can go to the adjustment layer, the circle at the bottom of your layers palette with the gray and white circle, and I'm going to choose solid color, and we're going to check brightness. That's going to change how dark it is. We're going to drag that down, okay? Drag that down to the bottom, making it a little bit darker. And now what we want to do is we want to clip this to that eyelash layer. So I can control click on that layer and choose create clipping mask. That means it's only going to affect that layer. Still not quite liking the color of this eyelash. I want it to be darker. So if I double click on this, I can come back up here to hue and drag this over to make it a little bit more black. There we go. All right, that's more of what I'm looking for. So it's starting to match a little bit closer to those eyelashes. Again, that's one of those things, depending on your subject's hair color, you can make it match. In this case, it looks like she's got some pretty heavy mascara on, so we want to match the other eyelashes that are there, because basically we're covering them up, but they will show through your brush eyelash. Okay, so now we need to modify this eyelash. What I want to do is get it in place, and I'm kind of lining it up with the corner of her eye right in here. And I need to bring this down to this part of her eyelid here. The way that I'm going to do that is if I go to Control T, it's going to give me my transformation tool, and I can go to a couple of different ways I can do this. I can rotate it like this and then drag it down. Okay, that's going to line it up pretty close, but it's still, I can still see that this corner's way out here, and even if I try to reshape it, it's not the best option for me to use. So I actually want to warp this entire eyelash. The way that I'm going to do that is by going to Edit, Puppet Warp, and I want to show mesh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pin here. So I'm just going to click there. I'm going to create a pin or click on the mesh right here to create a point, and then I'm going to click over here. I can turn that mesh off now, and now all I need to do is I can click on these points and drag them around. So I can drag this up and over. I can bring this down so it's at the corner of the eyelash. I'm going to click another point right here because I need to bring this up, and I can see that this is popping up here just a little bit. What I'm going to do is create another point and drag this down, so you can see how I'm just warping and adjusting this eyelash to fit right along her eyelid. Okay, there we go. So I hit enter and it commits that warp, and here's our new eyelash before and after. And it's subtle. Let me zoom out. It's just adding a little bit more. It's filling in her natural eyelashes to give her a fuller look. Now I can do the same thing to the bottom by choosing a bottom eyelash. It's one of these right here. I'm going to go with this one. Looks like that'll fit. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to do this on a new layer. So here we go. Again, I'm going to click on my foreground color. This time I'm going to pull the same color from that other eyelash that we just did, and I'm going to put the bottom lash right here just like that on a new layer. Make sure that you're at 100% opacity, and go to my move tool so I can move that eyelash around and figure out where it needs to be. And I'm going to go to Puppet Warp again, and I'm going to create some points here on the very ends, this part of the eyelash and this part of the eyelash out here, and then a couple in the middle so I can modify those. And now get rid of that mesh. What I want to do is start pulling this eyelash into position and apply. Okay, so there we go. We've got one eye complete, and we have the upper and the lower eyelashes, and we've filled that in. If it actually looks, as I look at this, it looks a little too much for me. So I'm just going to go to the transform tool, and I can, if I control click while I'm on the free transform, the way that you get to free transform, Command T, if I control click on that, it shows me all these other options. I can try warp. I can move this around, warp it, reshape it. Again, the goal here is just to try to make it look natural and get it to fit those areas. And I feel like these need to come up here more. So I'm going to go back to Puppet Warp because that cannot be recreated. Okay, well, let's do this then. I'm going to warp this, and I'll just pull it up like that. So I just click and drag and add that. There's some eyelash. If I look in this section here, as I turn this on and off, you'll see there's some stray eyelashes. And if I just go over to my erase tool, I can just erase those stray lashes right there. And it looks like I've got now some, it looks like everything's in order. This is creating a really dark spot. So what I could do is go back to my original image of her face and just retouch that. So I'm going to try using the patch tool. So I'm just going to grab this part and I'm going to pull it over here because I just want to minimize that section of those lower eyelashes. Turn this back on and there we go. Now it looks even and it looks natural.